everybody. Welcome to our second L&D Cares Conversations, a series of webinars, probably around twice a month, to help job seekers find, well, jobs, tips, tricks. And I want to interview some successful job seekers so we know what worked and we know it's possible. So with that said, last week we had our Career Growth Summit. I hope a lot of you were there. Several of your names look very familiar, so I think you were there. I was on a panel with Allyson last week, and so I want this to continue our conversation last week. Now, Allyson has had an impressive career in learning and development because she's worked in hospitality. She's worked at McDonald's in learning and development. She has, and now she's VP of Talent Management for the CARA Group. And she identifies top consulting talent for Fortune 500 companies. Allyson, because she has worked in learning and development, as well as now on the recruiting side, has a very unique perspective of the industry because she's been us too, so she gets it.
I do.
So, with that said, I'm going to jump right in. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and ask them in the chat, and I will try to keep an eye on the chat. And I think let's get going. So
sounds great.
All right. So let's start tactical. Allyson, what are some of the most, tactical, important tips right off the bat to give our job seekers?
Yeah. It's funny, as you mentioned, I've been a job seeker myself. So I've been at the CARA Group for 1.5 years, and I landed there thanks to some of the things I think that I did, and I think the community that I've built throughout my career. So I think that's the other best practice for everybody, is have your own community when you're looking to find a job. And honestly, what we do at the CARA Group, I have a great team of recruiters. I know Lisa's on the call today, and these are the things that they're looking for as well. And they've taught me a lot in my 1.5 years at CARA. So tactical tips, if you're looking for a job. Number one, this is a hard time. I've realized that. So I'm so glad that people are joining the L&D Cares community. This is a unique opportunity to help each other in our field. I think you and I were talking the other day, Michelle, about how L&D typically isn't the main character of jobs in a company. Sometimes it's a sales organization or an operations organization. So being hired into L&D, you really need to understand the business. And so some tactical tips is, if you do get to the point, people are hiring, maybe not as many jobs right now, but it's to be really prepared for those conversations and for those interviews. And to know what's an interview and what's a conversation, but to treat both of them the same, right? So whenever you're talking to somebody from the company or networking, be ready. And I think it starts with, there's a term interviewers use, you probably are aware of it, STAR. When you answer, people will ask you a question. Tell me about a time that you created a curriculum or a program, and tell me about how it was successful. And interviewers are always looking for a story. They want a specific situation. If I developed this program for XYZ company, here's what I did to ensure, and here's where the results that I got. Or I ran into these issues and I was able to overcome them, and here were the results I got. So it's being prepared. So STAR is a specific technique. You can Google it, but it really is about mastering your stories. And when you find yourself, I found myself a couple of times in my career where I was in transition, right, between jobs. And I have something over here on my bookcase where I actually wrote out my stories of, here were some successful curriculums I've built, for my L&D, leadership things I've done. And as you develop those stories, you're also creating a bit of a portfolio for yourself. So and that's another tip, right? As you have these stories, some places where you interview, and I know we do that at the CARA Group, we also ask that you just showcase your portfolio. So if you did build a curriculum, or you built a really awesome course, or a really interesting e-learning module, that you're able to showcase that along with it. As I've interviewed people, when I was at McDonald's, I probably interviewed 60 plus, if not more, instructional designers, and the ones that brought their stories and brought their portfolio, and that was the day when you sat across the table from somebody, now it's on Zoom, but opened their book or opened their computer and showed me what they delivered, it brought that to life, and it really showed me their skill set. Michelle, you and I were talking about sometimes people have left under unfortunate circumstances and maybe weren't able to create a portfolio or have things that they need to interview. And you had a great story that you shared, I think, right, about how somebody created a course.
He did on cats, on just
Yeah,
kitty cats and trivia about cats. And I hired him instantly because he'd just create in Storyline or Rise or something. He'd gone out and created a course on kitty cats.
on cats. It's funny. I think that was during the panel last week that my actual cat made an appearance
Yes,
on the
I'm always
screen.
watching for him in the background now.
He's napping somewhere, but yeah. So if you weren't able to collect your assets, sometimes that happens. Whether you've work for a company and something happened, you weren't able to collect your assets, or you worked for a consulting firm and you weren't able to collect your assets. It's make a portfolio for yourself. Whether it's a course on cats or how to Zoom, or what, maybe it's just a topic you're really passionate about. It doesn't have to be, specifically related to something that the company's done, but to showcase your skills in, design, development, and that. And as I mentioned, know your story. When we interviewed when I was at McDonald's, one of the things that we used to do is we used to do a lot of mock interviews for actually our operations group. And as part of that, we actually had them prepare a portfolio. And in that portfolio, it was their resume, it was their development plan. Some organizations have you create a development plan. And then they actually wrote out prepared answers, an introduction, and then they also had prepared questions. And the folks who really took the time to develop that portfolio, it's a lot of work. Looking for a job is a job. So number one, if you're doing that, I salute you. I know it's hard work, and that's a job in and of itself. But the more preparation that you have, the better your stories, the better your portfolio, the better prepared you'll be to stand out.
So what in our panel last week, you mentioned digital presence and how you are looking at that now. So I think if you could explain that a little more to our audience, because
Absolutely.
I don't think we all think about what we're doing digitally and how that might reflect on our job.
Yeah, I heard several other speakers talk about this last week, is make sure you Google yourself. If you haven't done that, do that today, and see what comes up. It's funny, I did that last week, and I came up in a newspaper in Tennessee. There was a picture of me giving a graduate from Hamburger University their diploma, and I had a quote. I had no idea that I was in this paper from Tennessee. And it was great because it was on brand for me, and I love developing people. And but always Google yourself. Recruiters now you apply for jobs, but you can also be passively recruited. People are always looking to build their talent pipelines. And so, making sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to date, that the skills that you have are the skills that are on your LinkedIn profile, that you have a good picture, that it's, professionally written, that you edit it, or if you're like me, who I'm not the best with editing and spelling, sometimes you have someone else look at it and edit it for you. And really tend it like you would anything else. But yeah, search up yourself, take a look at what you looked in on LinkedIn. It's not just the resume. I think every recruiting effort I've been a part of in my career, once LinkedIn and Google came out, we've always Googled our candidates. So you want to make sure you know what's out there on yourself on Google.
Are you, so I once had a recruiter tell me to stop commenting on things on LinkedIn because it might reflect bad, or she might not have liked what I said. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, we all want to be authentically ourselves, right? So I'm not telling you not to be yourself and not to be authentic. And, Michelle, you and I were talking yesterday about, even though today things are tough, you want to get a job at a place where you're going to be valued, where your purpose is in line with their purpose. So yeah, you need to think about what you're doing online and what you're commenting on. But I wouldn't ask you to be inauthentic, because you're going to show up as your whole self when you come to that
Right.
organization. But just know that what you've put out there, it's out there. So
Always
that,
out there.
we can't control others. We can only control ourselves. So, it's your decision in that area.
So you mentioned the talent pipeline in
Yeah.
there. So could you perhaps explain talent pipeline, and are people hiring for that now, or are they actually just hiring for right now, or how is it working?
It's funny. I know some folks on my team are on here, and we've been having an internal dialogue around some of this language. So, if you just Google talent community and talent pipeline, what are they? So yes, people are hiring for positions, but people are hiring for their pipeline, and they're also creating talent communities. So let me explain what the difference with all that is, right? So, um, a company has a position open, right? They go to their recruiting team. If it's a regular corporate job, we do it the same at CARA. We're more of a professional services firm. They go to the recruiting team. The recruiting team may post a job out there, right, and start hiring people. The goal of a recruiter is to have to build for that hiring manager a talent pipeline, a pool of candidates who could fill that position, right? And they interview off that pipeline. Sometimes companies say, we think we're going to need this role in the future, especially a company like us at CARA. We think we're going to need people. We're going to need a lot of people with this, that can play this role with this experience. So we know we're going to have an opening soon. So we're going to start creating a talent pipeline and qualifying people. So when that opportunity comes up, we can get people in position sooner. A talent community, like the textbook definition, is a talent community is a cohort of people who would be exceptional candidates for your company, but present circumstances prevent them from joining the team. And that could be present circumstances on the company's part or on the person's part, right? So sometimes when you go to apply for a job, there'll be a button that says join our talent community.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing. It's so, I want to join the talent community. It allows you to get into their ATS system to see what jobs are open. It gives the recruiters, recruiters are marketers too, right? So, marketers want people that they can market to. So the talent community are people that they can market their jobs to or their company to. And that's what that's about. Talent communities can also be built from reference checking tools that people use. If you fill out a reference on somebody, you can also join a talent community. If you're like, wow, they're applying for a job at this company, I'm interested in this company. Yeah, let me check off on this reference check that, yeah, I'd like to be a part of your talent community. So recruiters, companies, professional services firms, consulting firms, we're all looking to build our talent community along with a talent pipeline. And the talent pipeline, the textbook definition of that is a pool of candidates who are ready to fill a position, as I mentioned. And in that case, it's people who may have been interviewed, may have been qualified for a role, and different companies have different ways of qualifying. Some are tougher than others.
Okay. So then what is
Does
our,
that help?
it does help. And I had no idea when I always saw that for talent community. I thought they wanted me to just go in and chat with people, and because community, you think like LinkedIn or Facebook or
Yeah, communities are
now I know I should always click yes.
a great thing, right? We all are probably part of like 10 different communities, right? If not 100.
Can you tell us more about, so there's staffing agencies, there's VMS, which as contractors, a lot of people just get sucked right into, and professional services firms. And what is the difference in all of these? When people are searching for a resume, how do we know who we're talking to?
Right. So, I guess if you're applying to a job and there's a company name there, and I can use the CARA Group as an example, right? So we're a professional services firm, meaning that we solve the business problems of our clients, and our expertise is learning, change, and communications. And we work with professionals that are learning and development professionals, change professionals, communication professionals. And so when we're hiring, we always post the CARA Group, right? And you know that you're applying to the CARA Group. But you may be you're going to be placed at one of our clients, right? But you're still working for the CARA Group. Most of our jobs come from our account executives talking with clients and saying, you know, I have a problem to solve, whether it's I need to build a new onboarding program, I need to create a leadership development program, I have a new software I'm rolling out and I need someone to create training on it when it comes to training side. Sometimes there's, so you're always applying to somebody's job, right? And
right.
There are companies, the VMS is how a corporation, and Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but a VMS is an automated system where approved companies that are staffing agencies or sometimes professional services firms can request a contractor, right, or a consultant. I need a consultant, and sometimes it might be hourly. I've seen a consultant to work 40 hours a week for the next 6 weeks. Maybe they'll tell us even what it's for. We're building e-learning, right? And this is what I'm going to pay for that. And people can be part of a staffing agency. They can be part of a professional services firm like CARA, and they can have their own single shingle, right? So there's a lot of ways that you can get jobs nowadays. The unfortunate thing with a lot of VMSs is that the request might come from a learning and development department. It might just come from another, you know, in a big firm like a, you know, McDonald's or a big company. It might just be somebody saying, hey, I need someone to develop training for my department. They call up procurement or they enter something in their system and they sort of order up a person. It's not very personal. And it's not the way we operate at CARA, but it's a way to find jobs, right? It is a way to find jobs, of being in somebody's, you know, talent pool in an organization. At a company like CARA, we're gonna call you and say, hey, we have an opportunity at this client to do this work on this solution. If you're working for a staffing agency, they might just shoot your resume over to the VMS and then tell you later, you have an interview with this company, do you want it or not? So the VMS, as Lisa's saying, don't always allow for the firm to speak with the hiring manager. And that, you know, sometimes it's okay. If you need a job, it's a good way to get in and get some experience. But it's not very personal in nature sometimes.
Okay.
So,
can you tell us about a great experience you had as a recruiter?
as a recruiter, you know, I think I told this story last week, but I know not everybody saw it. So I lead the recruiting team at CARA, but because I've had lots of experience and I have lots of friends out there, I'm constantly, I hope, Lisa, referring a lot of people to say, hey, you need to talk with us at CARA. And I had a friend who lost her job earlier this year, and her and I connected and chatted, and I said, you know what, you might fit one of our roles that we have, but I'm not sure. I'm not going to guarantee anything. And she went through our process that we go through, and last week I got a note from her, and she did get qualified, and hopefully we'll find a place for her with one of our clients. But number one, it was great for me because as I lead recruiting, it helped me to understand, like, I know we do a good job, but it was great to hear the feedback of she said, this was a great experience for me, right? I felt like somebody cared for me. And I think nowadays, especially the way some people are getting furloughed or laid off, it's a tough time, right? Everything that's happening with COVID and the impact on.
Well, Allyson is freezing for me. I don't know if she's freezing for anyone else. Is it just my internet? Okay.
It's not just you, Michelle.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. We're Allyson, we're losing you. Okay, well, while
I'm coming back. I'm coming back. Okay, here I am.
I was
Am I
going to make
back?
Lisa talk, but okay.
No, I think I'm back. I think what it is, it's too many people on Zoom meetings in my house. So sorry about that.
That happens in
our
house
better?
A lot. Yes. Yes. Yes, we get echoes
Okay.
and too many people on Zoom. Happens all the time.
I'm so
Totally
sorry about
understand.
that. Yeah.
Okay, so so you were wrapping up your great experience.
Where did I freeze?
She
What's
just
that?
sent you a note.
My friend sent me a note. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess what it is knowing what everybody's going through right now is when we can show people that they're human and we care about them in the recruiting process, that to me is a good process.
Now, on the opposite end, maybe I should have asked this first, but what is a not so great experience you've had as a recruiter? Other than, when your people don't get the jobs, because CARA Group actually, everybody happens to be very empathetic as far as recruiters go. But
Yeah.
so aside from that,
Aside from that, a bad experience that we've had as a recruiter, I think where we struggle is where we want to help folks find a role and they're not explicit, right? So it goes back to the tactical stuff I was talking about at the beginning, where they're not prepared, right? They don't have their portfolio, or as we ask questions and try to get information, they talk theoretically and can't back it up with real live experience. And if you don't have it, you don't have it, right? But there's a lot of different opportunities out there. So it really comes when people aren't prepared, or I know there's ghosting from the recruiting standpoint. There's ghosting from the candidate standpoint too. Obviously, before all this happened last year, it was a candidate market, right? There were more jobs than candidates out there. And so sometimes, people would get far down and then, ghost you as a recruiter. And that's difficult as well. So I think you never want to burn a bridge on either side as
correct.
much as you can. Sometimes we make mistakes though, right? And we try to learn from them and do better.
I think Lisa said it last week, is
Yeah.
that one of her experiences was that she interviewed a candidate who hit that mark between saying too much and being too succinct. And I can't do that. Do you have any advice on how to actually not overdo? I would have a tendency to over explain myself, I think. So I don't.
Yeah, Lisa said it there in the chat. I mean, it's
Practice.
practice, and have a community. I love what L&D Cares is doing with the mentor groups.
Our cohort.
And I know some of you on the call are probably in those mentor groups, but finding people that you can practice with. I'm happy to share some of the questions we even ask in our interviews. And a lot of them are very practical questions around. And I see Lisa in the chat says, I use the STAR method to streamline my answers. Absolutely. And pause. I think that's the other piece. When people ask you a question, it's so easy to just start talking. And we're often uncomfortable with silence. And it's okay to be silent for a moment and let me think about that, right? Because you're in an interview, you are being put on the spot. And there's a trend now too with video interviews where somebody's not even in front of you.
Right.
Or you're being interviewed on a video. So preparation is key. Anticipating the questions that you might be asked. What's the site with the jobs? I mean, you can Google what questions people would ask. There's companies that will post some of the questions that they ask. So, but I think practice, having a mentor. Yeah. And if you don't have a mentor, find a mentor, somebody that can help you.
I second that. I recently found one myself.
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask just one more really tactical question because it irritates me. And it's a lot of times we'll come across something on well, if you're filling out an application, because no matter what, you've got to fill out the application. How much did you make and how much do you want to make? And they won't let you put in negotiable. You're stuck with numbers and you don't want to scare them with your numbers, but you don't want to, undervalue yourself either. And you don't want them to just throw out your application based on your numbers one way or the other.
Yeah.
How do you handle it?
That's tough. I'm going to put in the chat a site. So a lot of states and local municipalities have actually banned the salary history question. I think you and I talked about this too in the prep of, there was a job I applied for. I was so excited about it. And all of a sudden I was sent in the email, like, I need your salary history from the past 5 years. I need to know everything. And I was like, I feel kind of violated, you know? I'm like, I really want this job. I'm negotiable. Like, can't we just talk about that? And so luckily where we are in Illinois, there's a ban on it. So, you know, it's actually illegal to say, what did you make on your last job? And so it's good to know if you're applying somewhere, what the law is, so that, you know, you don't feel like you're backed in a corner to have to answer that. Most companies are going to benchmark salaries. They're going to know, you know, it's always good to know, what role am I applying for? What level is this in your company? You know, some companies have structured salary bands. You know, obviously government roles have very structured salary bands that are a lot more transparent. But yeah, there's certain states and municipalities where they just can't ask you. They can ask you, what do you expect? You know, what salary do you expect? And, you know, being honest and transparent is good. And if you share it, you share it. But there's some states where you don't have to share it. So I think it's really good information to know as a candidate, so that you're armed with that. And I hear someone said fair market value. And yeah, a good company should understand what fair market value is. They should do their research and know the salary range.
Okay, so let's talk a little about what's coming. So where do we think, everybody's asking this, right? The future of work, the future of L&D. I'm actually a little tired of it, but at the same time, we need to know, because everything's changing right now because of the pandemic. And so when we come out the other side, it's all going to be different. If you add in the technology, the AI, everything else that's happening, we need to think about what's coming. So what is your advice well, I guess, where do you think both recruiting and job seeking, how are they going to change?
Yeah, I think we talked about this yesterday, reinvention, right? So everyone's reinventing right now. They're reinventing jobs. Job seekers are reinventing themselves. So, you know, it's hard to lose a job, but it does give you an opportunity to reinvent yourself. When I moved into the job I had now, I've always been, you know, L&D, a leader in L&D, and I love L&D, but I also love talent management. I love recruiting and hiring and maximizing people's potential. And a lot of times L&D and talent management cross. So as I left my last job, which was not a plan of mine, and moved into my new job, I was able to reinvent myself a little bit. And because I had gained those skills. So sometimes you need to reinvent yourself. And job titles are always changing. People call jobs different things. So that's really important. I think for our field of learning and development, and I said this earlier, you and I talked about it yesterday, is for most companies, L&D isn't the core job that they're hiring for, right? They're hiring for manufacturing or sales or something like that. And often L&D is a key. It's a really important function in an organization. And so sometimes I've seen L&D people move into different roles, or they really like supporting sales and maybe they try out sales. I've had L&D professionals when I worked at McDonald's that said, I want to move into operations. I love training people on this and I've learned so much. I feel like I could go run a restaurant, right? And so our CEO at the CARA Group, she really wanted to run her own business, right? She came from an L&D background as well, and she has wonderful skill sets, and she has become a CEO of a business, right? And so reinvention of yourself, know that job titles are being reinvented. And I think being part of like this L&D cares communities and other communities to find out what's going on, what jobs are being created. I've heard a lot of people in L&D, we do have a benefit in that a lot of us can become consultants as well.
Yes.
So companies still need to train people, onboard people, make sure that people are compliant, some of the stuff that we do in L&D, right? And sometimes they can't do that without the expertise that learning and development people have, right? Understanding how adults learn and making compliance training so that it's not something that, is going to be the worst thing in life, which we actually recently heard from a client. Our compliance training is the worst thing at our job right now. And we thought we could do it on our own, but we can't,
Yeah.
so that's anyways, very important. So I think you can reinvent yourself, and nothing's ever permanent in life, right? We know that.
Right.
Nothing's ever permanent. So now's a good time for experimentation, for trying new things. And I think for upskilling too, right? We've done some research of what skills we think are going to be needed in the future, right? L&D tools change every day. Like Beyond wasn't a thing a few years ago. Now everyone needs to know Beyond, right? Flash went away. So, do you know how to use this tool? Learning experience platforms, adaptive learning platforms, and then in leadership and development, there's all sorts of new things happening. So I think, leveraging time when you're in transition for learning. L&D Cares, right? Last week, what we offered for free. So you can get a lot of that for free. And then while doing that, you're also networking with people and finding out how you can help them as well.
So Terry has a question in the chat that
Sure.
actually I'm kind of intrigued by, because I'll see positions posted elsewhere and think, well, everybody's at home. Maybe I should just go apply, even though it's in New York City. While I wouldn't mind living in New York City, it's kind of expensive. So is that something we can do now, is just make that assumption? Or are people functioning more on we're all going to go back to the office eventually?
I don't think anybody knows the answer to that, right? It's funny because the one opportunity that is good, Terry, is that I think there is more opportunity because people are remote. So do you have to live, within a certain mile radius now of? Probably not. Like a lot of companies are. There was something out a couple of weeks ago about how CEOs are like, oh, people can be productive remotely. But there's a few businesses too that are like, our people aren't productive remotely and we need to bring them back in. So we've had clients even tell us that it's okay that they're remote now, but maybe 3 or 6 months from now, maybe not. But nobody knows the answer to that question. So I think the best thing to do is talk to the recruiter about what is really required for this job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, I mean, I'm currently at UPS and we were not open to that kind of thing. And this experience has brought my manager around. And he's now like, well, I'm, what's he call it? Geography agnostic now.
Uh-huh.
And that is a huge step forward for him. And so it's a big deal. And I think more companies are looking at it. I did some research the other day for something that people are, I think 55% more productive at home, or some stat like that. There was a Stanford survey.
As long as your internet's working, right?
Yes. Well, I might be more productive if my internet wasn't working.
Yeah. It made me think of something. It just left my head, but it'll come back. But I think the other, actually the other piece I was thinking of is, I think we can work remotely, but if you're onboarding to a company, how good is that company's onboarding for remote employees, right? Have they retooled their onboarding program?
Right.
So that you feel like a part of it? Do the managers that are working in that business, it might be easy to start managing people that you knew and met in the office with remotely, but what's the challenge when you start managing somebody that you're never meeting in person, right? And that's where a lot of L&D opportunities are for companies is, hey, let me come in and help redo your onboarding program, because do your managers have the skills to manage remotely? Is your onboarding maximized to, onboard people?
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift for a lot of people now.
Yeah.
I did it for years before I took my current position, so I never met the people I worked with in person. Everybody was just a box on a screen. But for a lot of people, it's a big shift, and I've seen a lot of people having trouble with it.
Oh yeah, my years at McDonald's, we went back and forth, and I do think I see, Lisa, you had mentioned, remote certainly allows companies to downsize office space. At the CARA Group, we're moving to remote first culture, and we're moving to a smaller office footprint. But we still want to have a physical presence because community and connection is really important to us. But we have people that work for us all over the country for sure, and it does expand your talent, your options for talent.
Right, it opens up talent across the country.
I know for me, like not commuting has been so nice.
Oh,
Right? I have a few more minutes in the morning for maybe some exercise or other things that we all need for our mental health today as well.
yes, yes. Okay, so Tracy has a question on certification,
Okay.
ATD,
Yeah.
training industry. Are there any certain certifications you look for?
Um, I've noticed some job postings out there where they'll say, they want the ATD certification. I know for us in our change management field, like a ProSci certification really makes you stand out. In training, I might be looking at, if you have a master's degree from somewhere, that's going to tell me a story. It might be nice to have a certification. It will make you stand out. But it's your experience, it's your portfolio in learning and development. But if you need to upskill, ATD is a great place to go to upskill because, yeah, they've got a lot of relevant and actually your local ATD chapters. So a shout out to our ATD Chi chapter in Chicago. It's one of the biggest chapters in the country. And they have a lot, they've pivoted all to online, and all the Midwest chapters in the middle of the country have been working together to offer a lot of free. So, versus the national stuff, there's been a lot of free webinars. One of the things we actually do for our talent community, so for people who are qualified for us, we do Change, Learn, Grow, it's called, events, where we have consultants providing expertise, and we do sessions, webinars. We do a once-a-year conference, which was all virtual this year, to just upskill each other, right? So when you belong to a community, whether it's your ATD chapter or a talent community somewhere, or create your own talent community. If you want to learn something, how do you trade? Like, I can teach you this. Can you teach me that? So I think certification helps. I don't know that it's a end all be all, especially if it's a lot of money.
Terry is asking for seasoned or well-experienced workers, how far back to go. And I have this trouble because I have over 20 years in the industry. If I covered everything, it would be a 4-page resume. And I do list everything on LinkedIn. I've seriously condensed it to my favorite things on my resume.
Right, exactly. If you're applying for a job, it's always good. It takes work, right? But to customize that resume so it's focused on if the job is mostly e-learning, or if you're going to be managing a department, or it's good to customize and highlight those things. It's good to have, like, here's everything I have to choose from portfolio. But I think we even heard last week is most people are looking for the most relevant experiences. One of the things I did when I redid my resume, because I guess I would say I'm seasoned as well, is I created a graphical snapshot of all the different companies I worked with and my titles, and tried to make it a little bit different. I'm always drawn towards, we're in instructional design, learning development, I'm always drawn towards people who have a design feel to their resume too. So, you might have to have that traditional resume when you're applying, but how can you show your experience on a timeline? I saw somebody on LinkedIn had a really cool timeline view of their experiences. So yeah, you might not need to go back to your first job, but the relevant experience would be probably the most important. And nobody wants to read a 4-page resume, unfortunately.
Last week in the summit, somebody suggested you use JobScan to basically strip your resume of anything pretty.
Oh, yeah.
Well, for the initial submission, but then when it becomes an actual interview, you send them one you designed in Canva or something that actually shows your creativity and everything else.
Yeah.
So
I think especially when I hired lots of IDs, I always, again, your eye tends to go to those. I mean, I always looked at everything. Hopefully the recruiters have rubrics of here's the things that we're looking for. We want to see this kind of experience, these kind of tools, so that if they're pulling from a large group of people, you want to have a rubric so that you can narrow down the people that you're going to bring in for an interview. Even better is to try to network with somebody to find out what's the most important thing for that job. I think sometimes L&D people, like everyone in business, gets so busy, they don't often write the best job post.
No, it's cut and paste on job description.
Exactly. Or they change their mind,
Yeah.
Um, well, and in recruiting, there's a term Lisa taught me of, the purple squirrel too, where you see these job descriptions and we have, we want somebody with 2 to 3 years experience that can, do needs assessment and e-learning and design curriculum and manage 3 people and do that. And, they want everything. And it's really, it's probably not possible with that type of experience. And sometimes for me as a job seeker, that was code for, okay, they have unrealistic budget of what they expect to pay.
They want you to be a training a department of 1. You have to worry.
Yeah, like that. They put the world in a job description.
Yeah.
That is so true, Lisa. And sometimes it's who's the hiring manager too, right? Is it somebody from L&D that's hiring that has L&D expertise, or is it somebody that's hiring an instructional designer for their operations group, and they just know they need an instructional designer? When I started at one company, and I was in L&D, and I said, I need to hire an instructional designer, and somebody said to me, is that somebody who puts PowerPoint together? And like, no. And they were like, industrial designer? I'm like, no, let me explain to you what they're going to do. And it's, for folks that aren't in our field, sometimes they don't even understand what an instructional designer is. So
Now, where would you recommend people start searching for jobs in our industry? Sammy is curious. I'm to know Sammy. He's not an instructional designer, but he could project manage the heck out of anything, right? So he's coordinator, specialist, support roles for L&D, as well as instructional designers. Where would we focus? There's not like a site out there to go look. Probably the CARA Group website.
Yeah, you certainly check out our website. We've identified, like, the one thing I was reflecting last night is, when I was in the corporate world, except for 1 year where I happened to hire like 12 instructional designers because we were building up our team, I maybe hired 2 instructional designers a year, right? And I had IDs and design assistants, and that was pretty much it. And then I had a manager role. So, right, I had 3 layers of roles. At CARA, we have 3 groups of professionals we hire from. One is L&D, and we have a variety of roles that we hire for. We place some more than others. ATD has a job board specifically for training. So I'd say, go to ATD, network with people as well. Even asking people where, go to the L&D. If you're not on the L&D Cares LinkedIn page, go there.
Yes,
it's new. And
look for L&D Cares. Just search for that on LinkedIn. It'll take you to our company page. And anytime one of us sees a job description or gets it sent specifically to us, because we've got CLOs and managers and directors and things, whenever those job descriptions are sent to us, we do post them on the L&D Cares corporate LinkedIn site, which is a mouthful.
Right. And I mean, you can join a lot of job boards, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Indeed.com. I mean, you can join those, and then you'll start. I remember I did that when I was looking, and sometimes it's all the same jobs, right? Because when you're posting a job on an ATS, you're often sending it out to all of those job boards at the same time. So, depending on what you're looking for, you might want to.
Of course, I think we talked about this yesterday. You find most of your jobs through other people and not through the ads. And all but the one I'm in now, I always found through networking.
Absolutely. Yeah, networking is the way to go. And I think people right now, right, we're all very empathetic towards what everyone's going through, and you never know if you're going to be the one looking for a job. So I think people are really willing to help right now and, share what they can. And I think it's really important to understand, what's the criteria for this job. And depending on your circumstances, you might be able to be more picky of, like, I want a job and I want to be in this industry. We were talking about, one thing that's really important is to be maybe interested in the work you're going to be doing, whether it's,
Right.
So if it's an ID role in a pharmaceutical company or an ID role in a manufacturing company, do you even know what they do? How do they make money? Is that something that interests you? Do you want to learn about that? So really, being curious There are some associations for specific things like that. I think we heard something yesterday, Lisa, about, I think it's in pharmacy. Um, so there are sometimes specific, when I was in the hospitality industry, there's an organization called CHART, the Council of Hotel and Restaurant Trainers. And they post jobs as well in the hospitality field. So some of these industries have specific boards that you can also search on. So, might be linking in with someone who works in that field.
Right. I get emails from, I think it's called like careers in food or something, because I'm always hoping maybe one day I can be a trainer for a restaurant or something, right? But yeah, usually it's just for like chicken farms. It's
Oh,
really,
no.
it
Well,
really
everybody has to onboard. Everybody's hiring.
is.
My next door neighbor, early career L&D, he onboards at the manufacturer up the street where they build it's nutritional products, right? And he just onboards all the manufacturing folks, and he's in learning, but he's out of the HR field and he's in charge of learning and training. So sometimes L&D jobs are under HR as well. So I'm, understanding how that works. And Lisa mentioned the Healthcare Business Association is another one.
I think we have time for one more question. And so Terry is asking how to politely find out if you're up against internal candidates.
Oh, that's,
Did you out and out ask?
well, you can ask, or you could just assume you're going to be up against other candidates.
Yeah, but it's always harder when you're up against internal, because 9 times out of 10, they're just interviewing you to say they did.
Yeah, and that is unfortunate. I mean, I guess it's good. It depends are you talking to an internal recruiter, an external recruiter, but yeah, you're always going to be up against, unfortunately, there's always multiple choices that they have. So maybe it's important to ask, like, what's your criteria for select? Like, I really want this job. What's your criteria for selection? I've had people ask me that in an interview, and I really like that question. Like, what's your criteria for selecting the person who's going to get this job? So that might be a good question. And I would say, if you're interviewing, have 3 or 4 prepared questions that you want to ask them. And I think Lisa said this on the panel last week. If you interview and you really want the job, tell them that. I think I'd be a great fit. I love, I can see myself as part of this team. I can really provide value to you. And here's how I can provide that value based on what I understand. So you're a salesperson, you're selling yourself, right? How do you close the deal? The salespeople always ask for the sale at the end of the sale. So I would say do the same thing.
I think a good way to close this out would be you tell us about your friend Dan.
Oh, yeah. So I shared a story with Michelle yesterday that I knew someone that had just gotten a new job, and I said to him, so Dan, what are you doing now? What's your new role? And he said, well, I'm the CEO of Dan Incorporated. I said, I thought you were working for Redbox. And he goes, no. He goes, yeah, that's who's paying me. But I always see myself as I'm in charge of my own career, and I'm the CEO of my own career because I could be working for Redbox today and someone else tomorrow. And that always helped me. At the time, I had been working at one company for a really long time, and so I felt really connected there, but I knew I wanted to do something else. So I've kind of adopted that, attitude as well, as I'm in charge of my own career, and I have as much choice as the person hiring me.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a perfect way to end this today. So I want to let everybody know, if you're not already a member of L&D Cares, you can go to ldcares.org. You can sign up. We offer cohorts, and that's where you'll be placed into a group of 8 to 10 people with a career coach, and it's 3 months of free career coaching, and basically a group of people going through the exact same thing you are. So it's very helpful. It's people from all walks of life, 90% in learning and development. So that happens, and that's all free. When you are accepted into L&D Cares, we just go through a little process verifying that everybody's real. And we put you into the LinkedIn group where things are posted there. And then again, on our company page on LinkedIn is the any job description we come up with, and as well as advertisements for this webinar series. And we had, within the next month, you'll see the videos as I edit them from the Career Growth Summit last week. There's a lot of videos. So I'll be working on that. So those will be out there too. This is recorded and will be on our YouTube page in the next day or two. And Allyson, thank you so much. Lisa, thank you for jumping in with the chat.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. And
It's
for
great.
those of you
It's
that are
always great
looking, feel free to connect with me as well on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Great
If only, right?
community. Makes us all feel good. Yeah, absolutely.